Sage Wanderer here, and welcome to another edition of Hellfire. So, this is actually a special edition, a follow-up on a previous video that I did. Enough people commented that I felt like a follow-up was a good idea. This is a follow-up to the Spirit of Religion video that I did. And one of the primary questions is, what's the difference? There's a couple of questions. What's the difference between conviction and judgment? And what is the proper way to deal with someone that either God has shown you their sin or you have direct evidence of their sinful behavior in your church body? So, first and foremost, as a parishioner, as a member of the church, it really isn't your job to judge anybody, to discern anything in the body. It is the job of the bishop or the presiding pastor over the church to police those sort of things. And that when you get into individuals within the church confronting each other over behavior or pointing fingers or judging one another, it's a real problem. It's a real problem that pastors have to deal with on a regular basis. And I would say if you engage in this behavior, you should check yourself before you wreck yourself and your church. So, the spirit of discernment, let's talk about what that is, the gift of discernment. It's one of my primary gifts, and it's basically how you tell a good spirit from an evil spirit, a good person from a bad person, a truth teller from a liar. And so there is a proper method within the church body to deal with such things. And it's laid out pretty well in the Bible, and it is something that has been historically practiced in church from the very beginning. And in this modern times, where churches are very different and the structure or the leadership structure and methodology isn't clearly defined, community-bodied churches where pastors are elected and hired and fired by the people, these are the kinds of environments where this sort of thing can become a problem, as far as it causes infighting and finger pointing and accusations fly back and forth. And most of it's in the flesh. Most of it is not spiritual discernment, but simply children fighting with one another. Unfortunately, it's just, I'm telling the truth here, And most pastors that are educated, schooled, and properly trained see it that way as well, whether or not they tell you that. I'm kind of giving you some inside baseball here. But let's say you have the spirit of discernment, and the Holy Spirit reveals something to you about a member of your church body or someone involved in your church. So here is the tried and true, historically correct, and biblical and method that has been employed down through the ages. For one thing, an accusation holds no real power until it's in the voice of two or three. So the witness of two or three. A single accusation can be completely made up in the church, or in anything really. This is actually a good thing in all areas, that if it's true, the one person will be corroborated by other individuals who also know this truth. This can be applied also to prophetic words being spoken of in the church. If a person gives a prophetic word, there will typically be two or three, one or two other people who confirm this prophetic word and testify to its validity. That God won't give you and you alone this insight. That if your discernment is activated and you have this feeling that there will be others in the church who are given this as well. So what do you do with this? Do you stand up and proclaim your discernment, or do you go to the person and go directly to them? And don't confuse this sort of thing with offenses. I believe, and this is also based in biblical fact, and I won't go down, I'm not a Bible teacher as much as I'm just giving you guidance, from my perspective. So take this, with a grain of salt, honestly. Let God guide you. But if you take up an offense, if someone offends you, then the proper way to do that is to go to the person and go, okay, so just between me and you, what you said hurt my feelings, and can we talk about it? If the person then offends you again and basically tells you to go fly a kite, then you need to go to their direct oversight, which could be in the instance of, let's say this happens in a group. You go to the group leader. You could go to your or their direct oversight, which might be an elder or a deacon, and say, hey, this happened, I brought it up to them, and this is what they said. And then you have an arbitrator who fishes that out. Now, taking up an offense is very different than an act of discernment or information of a true sinful crime that's been committed in secret, for instance. So you want to go to your peers or your people right over you if you've been offended. But first you go to the person. It's best to go to the person and work it out amongst yourselves. Now, if we're talking about a genuine thing that the Holy Spirit has revealed to you or you've witnessed with your own eyes, then what you need to do is take this directly to your oversight, which may be a deacon, an elder, or if you don't have that kind of structure, take it straight to the pastor in private. Don't make a public accusation. Don't confront the individual. This is the proper method. You go to the pastor. Now, see, this may be the fact that you might be a confirmation source, that he may already have suspicions himself or have been, this discernment typically won't be given to you if it hasn't already been given to the pastor. That's just kind of the way the spirit world works. That what you may end up being is, rather than being an accuser, you might be a confirmer of an accusation that's already underway. So you go to the pastor in private and you go, look, this is what the Holy Spirit showed me. Or you go to the pastor and say, I saw this with my own eyes. And if you're the first person, then he's going to seek discernment on his own, and also he's going to ask his leadership if anyone has heard of this or if this accusation has been levied before. He might even do an investigation into it. So judgment is when you look at someone, you make a decision that they're wrong, and then you say something to them, or you don't say anything to anyone and you hold this against them, and that is judgment. Discernment is when the Holy Spirit reveals something to you in a supernatural way. And if that is the case, then you need to go to your spiritual oversight and have them discern you to make sure that you are not being deceived. Make sure that you are plugged in correctly. And they will get confirmation with their own spirit of discernment. It gets more complicated if the person that you have this discernment about, or you've witnessed some misbehavings of some sort. If that person is over you, it gets more difficult. But then I would go laterally rather than going over their head. If it's somebody directly over you, rather than skipping and going straight to the pastor, I might go sideways to a peer of his, and the two of you then go to the pastor. So there is a proper way of doing this, and it has to do with the authority chain in the church. And what you don't want to do is become the judge, jury, and executioner of the people around you, of your peers, and of other members of the body. You want to, because to be honest with you, it's real easy for you to be tricked by the devil. And you need other people confirming this. You need other people to measure you and your discernment. I don't trust my discernment 100%. I could be wrong. I often seek counsel when something, especially if something is important, and it would affect the church body in any way. So there is a big difference between judgment, discernment, and now let's talk about conviction. So one of the things that came up is people talked about conviction. It's not your job to convict another Christian of some misbehavior. It's just not. Unless you're in church leadership and then you take it to a peer or a person over you and you guys talk about it, and two or three of you go together. One person arguing with another person or accusing another person is ripe for an argument and a disagreement and a flare-up. But when you involve two or three people, then it's more like an intervention, and it has more power and authority, and is oftentimes the correct solution to working out problems. But conviction is a wholly different thing. It's a completely different thing. I don't need you to convict my spirit, right? If I'm doing something wrong, that's the Holy Spirit's job. He's going to come to me personally. I'm going to feel conviction. I'm going to feel in my heart that I'm not right with God. If I was a Christian to begin with, if I had a relationship with Christ and I'm stepping outside of it, I know it on some level, and the Holy Spirit is working with me and trying to tell me. And then a lot of times that's why this does tie into the proper authority chain and how you approach someone who is, say, in sin, in open sin, or in hidden sin. If it's been shown to you through discernment or you've actually witnessed it, the person who's involved in it, they know what they're doing. They have the same conviction. If you accuse them, they're going to be defensive. If 2 or 3 people they respect, come to them and go, look, this is what we're feeling, this is what we've seen, what say you? Do you feel convicted over this behavior? Do you feel at all like maybe you might be outside God's will? So this is the proper way. It's a group thing. It's not an individual's right or an individual's calling to go around pointing out other people's sin. This is a misuse of discernment. It's like discernment is a weapon or a gun or a tool, and instead of using it properly and safely and in the proper manner, when you take it upon yourself to just go about, it's kind of like a guy, pointing a gun at everybody in the room, and so I hope that clarifies my belief and understanding, and my training on the subject is that is the proper way to deal with discernment. Conviction is a personal thing between the person and the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit woos them in a way that draws them back to the proper pathway. And you want to work with that instead of against it. You want to avoid an accusation and make it more like an investigation. And for that, you need oversight, and you need other people in the ministry working with you. You don't want to be a tattletale, honestly. And I would go about by asking questions rather than bringing a solid, especially with discernment. Discernment is evidence, but not proof. And it can be part of what is going on instead of all of it. You may only be seeing a portion, whatever God has revealed to you. And if He revealed it to you, it's for one of 2 reasons. 1, for you to just be aware. Or 2, for you to go to spiritual oversight, share this feeling of discernment with them, and have them discern you. Because sometimes the devil can confuse us, and what seems like discernment is really just suspicion. So I hope that helped. May God surround you and yours with His ring of fire and hedge of thorns of protection, and may the angels accompany you in this battle against evil.